Hey guys, I know you're excited to see how my Porsche engine is coming along, but before we do, real quick, just give me a minute for my favorite leather goods company, Beckett Simonon. These guys make the most comfortable dress shoes and boots that I have ever worn. The leather is full grain Argentinian calf's leather, and what that means is, if you don't know about leather, full grain means it breaks in. If you scratch it, it's the same color all the way through, so it ages. It looks good the more you beat it up. You don't have to treat it with kid gloves for fear of getting it scratched. It's made in ethical conditions in Colombia and Portugal by the finest craftsmen, and every pair of shoes, bag, belt is made by hand and made to order. By not using middlemen and not carrying inventory, that's how Beckett Simonon is allowed to sell you these shoes, which would be 3 or 4 times as expensive in a department store, for a totally reasonable price. If you hit the link in the description, I have the special TST price for you guys on anything Beckett Simonon makes. These shoes I just got because I'm getting married in April, and those are going to look good with my new custom wedding suit, and I got the belt to match on the way. I am stoked. Check them out. I wear these things every time I go out and dress up, and I have never looked back. Now enjoy this video. Hey kids, welcome back to TLG Auto in North Hollywood, California. We are standing in front of my motor. Last time I was up here, I had Marco, the owner of TLG and today's cameraman, to walk us through what was wrong with my 911 and what we were going to do about it. Well, today he's gotten a lot of the way through the rebuild, and we're going to follow up with what new parts are going into the engine, as well as what we were able to reuse from before. So, give me the camera, Marco. Marco Gerace.
Hi.
Hello. Well, thank you for having us back, sir.
Thanks for being here.
All right, tell me what is up with my motor.
The short story is that it's going back together very well. It came apart very well too. So once I split the case, I got to look at the bearings, connecting rod bearings and the main bearings, and they showed little to no sign of wear.
You have those out.
I do, yeah.
Show us those. So to back it up a little bit, last time I was here, you said that we were uncertain about whether we could reuse the pistons, whether the case needed work, and then in between then and now, you hit me up and you said...
I said, how committed are you to spending the money that you've earmarked for the project? And your response was, well, I've emotionally prepared myself for it. And to that I said, well, since you don't need to buy pistons and cylinders, you can take that money and you can transfer it into doing a complete motor, because you're going to save $4,000 or $5,000 in pistons and cylinders and all the associated stuff that goes with that. So, and also not having to take the engine out again in 2 years. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that based on what I saw after I took the motor apart, the motor would have gone at least another $50,000 to $100,000 without question. So it would have been far longer than 2 years. Yeah. But you don't know that because you had no service history on the car beforehand. So it's always a gamble, right? You always kind of got to gamble on how good is the Porsche motor, how well was it treated, and so on. And since you really had nothing to go on, we made the judgment call. All right, so what'd you find? So I found that essentially the only wear and tear on these main bearings is going to...
That's what a main bearing looks like?
Yeah, so this would be a #1 main bearing. So it's got the thrust on the side here.
So I've never really gotten a good look at these, but this is not like a roller type of bearing, right?
No, it's a plain bearing.
It's just a plain bearing. So yeah. It's just metal and lubricant on metal.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the lubricant keeps the metal from touching.
Right.
All right, so the short story is that when the engine case is put together, you have yourself a circle, right? And so horizontally opposed motors, this would be the bottom, okay, when it's in the car. So let's see, wait, hang on a second. I had to think about that.
You don't have time to think in this video.
All right, so basically the wear and tear here, the wear and tear on this bearing, just from supporting the weight of the crankshaft.
It's just from the crankshaft sitting
It's literally just the weight of the crankshaft wearing through the very top layer of the coating on the bearing. Okay. But again, there's plenty of meat here. It's not even showing copper. Yeah. Okay.
Is that how you would know if it was bad? If you could look through it and
if you see copper, then you know that it's bad. Another way you can tell is, like I said, you can take oil samples and track the life, because these will be shedding material. There is always material touching. Yeah. And so the amounts of these materials, these trace metals and so on and so forth will tell you the story of your motor's life without having to take it all the way apart.
Okay, what else did you take?
So here's another main bearing. This would be one of your standard, like, you know, number 2 or number 4 main bearing. And again, you can see only on one side did it actually take any wear, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's from the weight of the crankshaft, but again, it didn't go through to copper. So those are the mains. The mains they're cherry. Like, I mean, like good. That. Like, I would have no problem putting those
like into another. Would you
well, no, you would never. You'd never take those and reuse them.
Okay.
But I'm saying, like, if you know, if we were on like a shoestring budget, I would have run those in your case with your crank in the same exact locations again.
Yeah. Okay.
On a shoestring.
Right.
But for the price, a couple $100 for a brand new set of bearings, just throw them in the trash and move on.
Yeah. The labor of taking them out and doing all this is worth just buying the new part.
Absolutely, 100%. But
it.
back in the day, you never know what was done.
Right.
Okay, and then we have the rod bearings on the other side. These rod bearings, I'm going to show you these. They've been banging around in the box, so forgive the little pock marks and whatnot. But generally, you can see that there was no wear and tear at all on the rod bearings, except for one of them, and I don't remember which number this was, but you can see there's some grooving in the bearing. Mm-hmm. And that tells me that there was a little piece of debris or something that got in there at one time and put a cut in the coating. But again, even that didn't go to copper. Even though you can feel it with your finger, this bearing had a lot of life left in it. And this was the worst of it, and it probably happened, you know, not too long into the motor's life, you know, and it's been like that for a long time. So again, it's nothing I would have worried about.
Okay, we got valves?
Yeah, these are the exhaust valves because when we were doing the intakes kind of got thrown away before I realized we should probably save them for a video. But this would be number 6. More than likely, this is
the shot one.
Yeah, this was the one that was probably your worst of all. And you know, you can just see the carbon buildup on the backside and on the head of the valve. And what I don't know if it comes across here, but you can see heavy wear here.
You can see a little bit.
Yeah, the determination is made on measurement, right? So you measure them, and if they're good, you know, they can go again. But in this case, again, for the cost of the valve, for as far as we're going, it's just a better idea to just throw it away and start over. And, you know, new guide, new valve, longer life.
Okay.
And so but again, here conversely, here's one of the better running cylinders, right? If you look at the stem of the valve, you see some wear, but very little comparatively. Again, I don't know if this is transferring in the video. But you're looking for marks going this way because that's, you know, when the valve travels in the cylinder head. But again, the back side of the valve is and the tip of the valve is showing that it's not using too much oil on that side.
Okay.
I would say that the oil consumption that you were seeing with your motor was due to 2 things. Probably worn out seals on the valves, the valve guide seals, and the fact that the guides and the valves themselves had just reached their lifespan and they were just wore out and they were moving oil. So.
All right, cool. What else we got here?
You got some timing chain stuff. These are your idler.
The original ones. Right?
These are your OEM idler sprockets. These are the tensioners, right? So this does all the loading from the chain tensioner, and you can see that the chain has started to kind of eat into.
Can you show that? I know you got a new one over here. Bring that.
Yeah.
Can we show that next to the new one?
Yeah. Let me go get it.
You want to bring the clean one to the dirty part of the room, and not the dirty one to the clean part of the room.
It's all right, baby. Don't worry about it. Here, let me come over here. And you can see just a vast difference.
Focus. There we go. Yeah, that old one looks kind of worn there.
Yeah, and so, you know, you replace one, you're going to replace its mate also, which is the larger sprocket.
Would these have been part of the top end rebuild?
Yeah,
or okay.
yeah. I would have done this with the top end.
Okay.
Yeah, the bottom end is strictly main bearings and rod bearings. Okay. I mean, that's really what a bottom end comes down to. You take out the oil pump and the lay shaft, and you look at the lay shaft bearings, you look at the timing chain sprockets on the lay shaft. But all of that stuff was in beautiful condition. I sent some photos to you, which you may or may not.
I will use.
Yeah, okay, so you can use them and show just how nice it was.
They're going to be looking at those right now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so when you put this motor back together here, should it feel different? Like, are you doing extra balancing that wasn't done at the factory, or that might have changed over time, or
what I did, which is I do all the time, is you just take a balance. We didn't send the stuff to the balancer. There's just not that type of build, but I did weigh all the connecting rods and the pins and everything, and the connecting rods were all within 2 grams of each other. So
is that good?
That's pretty good on a production motor for just guys, you know, grabbing sets of rods off the shelf to put in a motor. And you balance them from the heaviest at the flywheel to the lightest at the pulley. So that's how I put them back in the motor.
Is that because of
the weight of the flywheel will dampen everything? Yeah,
okay, right.
Yeah, and so hopefully that'll smooth things out a little bit more. I mean, the motor.
Do you think that may affect, you know, because the one thing, even when the engine was working properly, I had to let it warm up. It didn't really want to idle super smooth when it was really cold. So by adjusting the balance of those rods, will that change it all?
That won't mess with anything other than the smoothness of the motor in regular running, regardless of temperature.
Okay.
So if the motor is spinning, it should be smoother.
Okay.
You know, and like I said, all the pistons and cylinders, they were together and marked. And
what are we looking at on the engine here? Case, sandwich.
So you got case.
Yeah.
You've got your pistons and cylinders, which are here, but all you can see is the cylinder.
Yeah.
And then you have your cylinder heads, and then you have your cam towers.
And this is all my original stuff.
All your
cleaned up and reassembled.
Correct. Yeah. Powder coated the sheet metal and the air, for the air deflectors, so that that just looks good because it was all rusty and crusty. You know, we didn't send the case out and have it tumbled and whatever, because it's not that type of like jewelry job. You know, it's about function and form rather than Concours restoration, because I know you're gonna beat the crap out of this thing.
I'm gonna use it, and it's gonna get dirty.
Exactly. Exactly. So, got all new hardware, washers and nuts and stuff. So the way that's
and use ARP head studs, right?
I use ARP head studs, ARP rod bolts.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So this motor could spin 7,500 RPMs all day long, and you don't have to worry about your rod bolts.
I don't think the red line is set that high.
It won't. No, it's not. But what I'm saying is it's plenty good. With these, the connecting rods are solid. They're good connecting rods from Porsche. They're a little heavy comparative to like a Potter or a Carrillo or something like that. But the rod bolt is usually the weak link in the chain. And so now with the ARPs, you have absolutely zero issue whatsoever.
Cool.
I don't know if your audience cares.
I think you'd be surprised.
Essentially, what you have, so you have case crank and rods are inside here, and then you have your pistons and cylinders here. And what's cool about a Porsche is each cylinder head is individual, unlike like a Chevrolet where it's one big cylinder head.
Literally individual.
So you can
separate part.
You can see it.
In the first video, we had them individually separated.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so in here, the cam tower. The cam tower is what holds the camshaft, the rocker, and the rocker shaft, which actuates the valve. And you can see here...
In a regular car, this would all be
one piece. Correct.
And now it's a separate unit.
Exactly. Yeah, and in like a Chevy pushrod motor, the cam is down in the case. But what you can see here, because I don't have the valve train assembled because we just got the cams moments ago. Literal moments ago. You can see that we've got some Osco titanium retainers in here, which are the best in my opinion. And what's great is, I don't know if you can see it, but they're dated.
I can see that.
So that's how old they are.
The focal length. Yeah, you can. Yeah, there you go.
They're dated. So we know. So these were made as a set in January, February, March of 2018. Right. So 15 years from now, when you take it apart, there's titanium in there, and titanium has a life, and so you look into things and you can test it and check it, and you have a start point.
That's smart. I like that.
Yeah, and they're phenomenal. I've seen them go for hard miles.
I like one of my favorite things that people do when they service a car is they write the date on the oil filter. That's one of my favorite things to have.
Really?
That date. Yeah,
I'll get myself a paint pen.
Yeah, no. When you write, then you just, if you don't put a lot of miles on the car, it's like, how long has it been? Now I know.
Yeah. So it's cool, and then underneath the retainer is an Osco spring and an Osco spring seat.
Can I see it?
They're a little bit heavier duty, which is great for guys that like to run the piss out of things. So if we put a really high lift cam in this thing, it would be no problem, which we didn't. So,
let's talk about the cams. What do we have? What cams just arrived here? The original plan was just the 964 cam, which Lee Keen does in a lot of the Safari builds.
Yes.
It's sort of a plug and play, OEM solution.
So we went with a 964 plus.
What do you get out of a plus?
It's just a little bit more top end, just a little bit more without giving up too much on the bottom.
Because this is a city car, so more power is good, but every time I've put a cam in a V8, in an American V8, it's made it worse.
Well, this is not going to make it worse. A essentially what we were aiming for is we were aiming for drivability, right? But I know you like to run your machines hard, right? So I'm building something that when you're out there and you're wailing on it, it'll just live. It'll live forever. Just because it's a little bit more than a 964 doesn't mean it's less in terms of like power band or whatever. It moves things around a little bit.
So how will this change my power band from where I was to
Well,
now?
because it's a 3.2, because it's a big motor, you already have a lot of low-end grunt.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to bolster the bottom. What you need to do is open up the top and let these 41 millimeter intake ports really work. But on the flip side of that, you don't want to have too much cam that the Motronic fuel injection can't keep up. It's kind of archaic because it's from the 80s and it doesn't have a sampling rate, you know, and the way it measures isn't like on modern standards. So you have a small window of what you can do with cams. But these are designed to work with the Motronic.
Okay.
So you can really take advantage of that flow capability of the size of the intake port, and the fact that you have headers. You have that early style exhaust. That's why I chose this cam and not just a 964 cam, because you have the exhaust to complement the flow.
Okay.
So I think that this is going to be good for you.
I gave you license to choose the right cam.
I think we're going to be good.
What else do we have in your pile of clean parts?
Pile of clean parts. Hold on a second. Let me put this away.
Make sure it's nice. You're on camera.
Yeah. All right. Just more stuff. You've got some chain rails here. I laid them out because I don't know if your audience knows. You'll see you have 1, 2, 3. No.
Naturally,
they're black.
shiny.
The black plastic and one brown one. So you have
one brown?
That's the way it is in Porsches. This brown one is a slight bit different dimensionally.
Oh.
The dimension is a slight bit different. A black rail will work in a brown rail spot, but it won't be right. But it won't be right.
Okay.
So to make it right, if you look at them from the side, you can see this one's a little taller.
You know what's fucked
than
up
this one.
is I'm actually colorblind and I literally cannot tell the difference.
You know what? It's hard for me too. I'm colorblind.
Why don't they
as well.
make it yellow or something? Make it a little easier. Black and brown.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, that's why you use part numbers too.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
So anyway,
There's like cam gears and...
Yeah, you got your these are the ones that drive the cams. So the chain is going to go over these for the tension, and it's going to drive these sprockets here. And again, the big ones over there are showing a little bit of wear, you know, for the cost of entry and just the peace of mind.
Right. No,
Just
I'm
go
a
with
big
that.
fan of already in there. I am
Yeah.
not going to argue with already in there kind of stuff, especially if it's for durability.
Again, this is this kind of stuff you'll never have to worry about.
Yeah.
You know, once it's done, it's done. So...
Well, that's the state. So
I wish that
now that all the parts are all the parts here right now?
We're waiting on fuel injectors, which got hung up
getting
because of the
new
holidays.
injectors?
No. We're having yours refurbished.
What do they do when they refurbish a fuel injector?
What they do is they basically test it to see the spray pattern and the flow, and then they clean and adjust. I guess they adjust. Essentially, they clean and they put all new O-rings, and I don't know what else they do. I think if they're bad, they'll replace them.
What is the benefit to having mine redone versus just buying new ones?
Because, well, price number one, but number two, your injectors are fine. They're just dirty.
Oh, okay.
They just need to be cleaned.
Okay.
They'll make us. I mean, you can make a substantial difference without spending thousands of dollars.
Well, my knowledge is limited to Fox bodies here,
Yeah.
but you get a set of Fox body injectors for like no money.
Yeah, you
So
can't.
these are
This is Porsche, man. They are not cheap. So you know, again, you could accomplish the same thing at a third of the cost. You might as well do it that way.
Yeah.
If there was any reason to replace it, it would get replaced. But to date, I have yet to replace them unless they were non-working.
All right.
You know.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was more to show you, but I put the heads and everything on yesterday. I was in a hurry.
We're looking good. And so once those parts arrive, how long do you think to reassemble all this and get it back in the car?
My goal is to have it back in the car by the end of next week.
That'll be rad. I'd be excited.
That's hard work, but I think we can do it. And here, this box of parts and stuff. These are all your powder coated sheet metal pieces.
Ooh, can we take one out and take a look at
Yeah.
powder-coated?
So here's something that I find was really cool. BBI did a really cool little setup that I was like wowed by.
To make the vintage muffler work on a modern car?
So basically, the way the 3.2 heat is set up, there's a crossover pipe that goes underneath the sheet metal and uses the different type of heat exchanger. When they used the early style heat exchanger, they had to make the heat adapt. Otherwise, you're changing all the sheet metal on the motor. You're changing the top of the motor, the shrouding, all the stuff that it's expensive,
Yeah.
right? And so they made these two really bitchin' pieces. They made this really cool block. They machined this billet block, right, which bolts up here, like it's gonna bolt here on the motor, and it supports this really dope heater pipe that they made that's like super custom.
So because a lot of people don't know, if you do a certain type of aftermarket exhaust on a 911, you lose your heat.
Yeah.
Literally. You don't, like my friend Larry has a 964 that's a beautiful car, it's very fast, it's lovely. It doesn't have heat at all. And I'm like, he lives in Connecticut. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so anyway, this is gonna end up right here, give or take a little bit. But this is a really elegant, classy solution to a problem that a lot of people.
Repowder coated, or is it?
No, it was raw.
Oh, it was unfinished.
Well, I mean, it looked good, but I mean, I powder coated everything,
Right. Oh,
so
yeah.
we're making it all disappear.
Oh, cool.
You know?
Well, that looks lovely.
Yeah, they did a really good job. This is a bitchin' piece.
So included in my build log here is a bunch of things that didn't necessarily need to be powder coated and refinished, but are being refinished.
Well, yeah, I mean, the powder coating is going to save the sheet metal from rusting.
Right.
So the original sheet metal was just black paint.
Yeah.
And it wears itself away, rubbing against the engine compartment seal and so on and so forth. And so when you do this, you refurbish it. It gets sandblasted and powder coated, and it gives it a longer lease on life.
Awesome.
You know?
So, end result, same money I was originally going to spend. I now get a brand new 0-mile engine. And a bunch of powder coated stuff.
Yep.
And
I don't know if I sent you pictures of the pistons and cylinders and stuff like that, but I mean, they were bitching. They were almost done. They looked new.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were good.
I gave them a quick run with the ball hone just to kind of clean them up a little bit, and it came out great.
Awesome. Well, Marco from TLG Auto doing work. I hate doing this with the camera, but
You want me to hold it for you?
No, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
It's okay. I'm excited to get this thing back together. I'm excited to be driving it again. And thank you to Marco. Don't give him shit. Things cost money. Work has to be done, and to rehash it like nobody fucked up. Like, this is a thing that happened as a result of age and use.
Yeah, so just to really quickly go over the dollar figures of it all, right? So you asked me off the cuff, what's an estimate of the rebuild, right? And I said, I think it was like 15 to 18, right?
I think you said
or 18 to 20
I think
even.
you said 18 to 20, which is more than it's actually going to be. But
Yeah.
you never want to guess low.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's under promise and over deliver, right? I'd rather have you be prepared to spend 18 and spend 15 than tell you it's going to be 18 and give you a bill for 20. But
well, I got a lot of emails of people who were like,
I could do that for 10.
Yeah.
Suck it.
Well, it's not, that's not really how life works. So
when pistons and cylinders are involved and the cost of those things these days, it gets out of control. But it's nice to know that we were able to do the whole motor for less than the original estimate.
Less than the low number.
Exactly. So, I think that's huge. I think
that's why you want an honest mechanic. Because if you told me I needed new stuff, who was I to argue?
Right.
I don't know. You could be like, oh, your pistons were toast. We need new ones. I go, all I could do would be like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could find ways to spend your money, but we don't need to.
I have a Lamborghini too. It needs a budget allocation. All right. Well, I'm gonna get out of here. Go back to the west side. And next time I see you, that engine should be installed in a car. So bye.